Hello and welcome to Access Asia. Coming up, from compatriot to pariah, Wuhan residents are stigmatized in China as the country struggles to control the outbreak of a deadly virus. Campaigners say more laws are needed to protect Australia's wildlife and environment. Bushfires and deforestation compounding a problem that's getting worse every year. And could peace hopes lead to ski slopes in Afghanistan? A new generation of young people want to change the reputation of the war-torn country. Well, the deadly virus in China has had, of course, a human toll, but it's also sown a level of mistrust in the country. As the crisis worsened, Hubei province was effectively sealed off. Residents who were away at the time then found themselves unable to return home. Trapped on the outside, treated like an outsider. Many have been unable to find work or a place to sleep at night. Our team on the ground reports.
This video has been making the rounds on Chinese social media.
你好，刚才你们是前台是谁接的电话？我接的。你接的是吧？你们是收到哪里的通知？宾馆不给我们湖北人开放。
The man filming is from Hubei province, where the coronavirus epidemic started. This hotel won't accept him on the grounds that he might be dangerous.
我先问你啊，我们是湖北人对吧？对。我们身为湖北人，我们骄傲。我们没回湖北。我们如果回湖北了，我们自觉接受隔离。你们任何有关部门，我们全力配合做检查。但是你不可以这样对我们湖北人。
All over the country, people from the birthplace of the new disease have been ostracized. In this town on the border with Hubei, we met this distraught man. Originally from Hubei, this 49-year-old migrant worker lives in Beijing. He'd planned to return to his hometown to see his family for the holidays, but the entire region was put on lockdown. He can't go there and is now stuck here, 200 kilometers from home.
My situation is very complicated. I'm completely stuck. I have no solution in sight, and I don't know what else to do. I can't go back to Beijing, and I can't go to my hometown in Hubei province either.
He doesn't even have a place to sleep. On his ID card, the two characters for Hubei are clearly visible.
People in hotels look at my ID card to see where I'm from, and they systematically refuse to let me in. And all this because of that virus. Without that, I'd be home by now.
In the south of the country, local media outlets that toe the party line have been covering the issue of these new pariahs. On this news report, some are worried of seeing people sleeping out on the street.
We're here to clean the streets, but every night there are people sleeping on it. Some have blankets, others have nothing.
Most of them are from Hubei, like this young migrant worker.
The factory where I worked is closed for the holidays, but I decided to stay here. I was staying in a small hotel, but now they don't want me anymore.
Even finding work is becoming difficult. This posting by a temporary employment agency says that, for the moment, we're not hiring anyone from Hubei. This discrimination has also reached the country's economic capital. In Shanghai, only 2 hotels accept customers from the province. They're guarded by police, and no one's allowed close by, so we film from a distance.
Who stays here?
There are only people from Hubei here. The hotel is just for them. They're not allowed to leave and the hotel is full.
They are outcasts in their own country. In Shanghai, authorities are putting locks at the entrance of residential compounds and screening all entries and exits. They're concerned about letting people from Hubei in.
We update the building managers and they pass on the information to the neighborhood committee. They check that people aren't coming back from areas that have been heavily impacted like Hubei or Wuhan. If that's the case, then we don't let them in and we isolate them.
Even if they're not sick.
Yes, even if they're not infected, they don't get in. People from Hubei are not allowed to leave their province.
Some local governments have even offered rewards for those who report people from Hubei who are trying to hide from the authorities.
Well, other countries are also battling the virus. One of the biggest outbreaks outside of China has been in South Korea. Many cases have been linked to a hospital and a religious group near the southeastern city of Daegu.
At South Korean places of worship, many empty pews. Even for the faithful who attend services, protective measures are mandatory as the COVID-19 viral outbreak continues.
There aren't a lot of devotees now. The elderly especially are not able to come. Currently, we're limiting personal gatherings within the church except for Mass.
One secretive sect that mainstream churches call a cult in the southeastern city of Daegu could well be to blame for a major surge in infections. The Shincheonji Church of Jesus and practices that leave its followers at higher risk of contagion. The sect aggressively proselytizes, and its believers aren't meant to wear anything on their faces like glasses or face masks.
They usually go into other churches at random to poach people. I'm worried because we don't know which church they're going to go to, and they could spread the virus to those other churches.
One of Shincheonji's faithful twice attended service earlier in February, even after becoming sick. Something they see almost as a sin since it prevents them from doing God's work. The virus has rampaged through the congregation and beyond ever since, making the sect the target of even more anger and mistrust than usual. For its part, Shincheonji says it gave authorities a list of its Daegu members to its own detriment.
As a result of a leak, things that shouldn't be happening are happening. The church's members are facing forced leaves of absence, discrimination, insults, and even pressure to resign from work in local communities.
That's likely only forced Shincheonji believers to become even more secretive, even as Korean authorities attempt to screen and test the entire Daegu congregation, some 9,000 people in all.
Well, Australia is home to some of the most unique nature in the world, rich with savannas and grasslands, tropical rainforests, and diverse woodlands, all providing shelter to some of the world's most precious animals. Therefore, it's perhaps surprising that the country also has one of the highest rates of tree clearing of any developed country. Have a look.
Trees torn down by a bulldozer as far as the eye can see. This footage wasn't filmed in the Amazon, but in Australia's richest state, Queensland. Here, a record 300,000 hectares are cut down every year. And despite the devastating fires that have plagued the country for months, wide-scale logging continues. As a result, thousands of wild animals have already disappeared. On their family land, livestock farmers David Wright and his wife have some 5,000 cattle. The livestock is spread out over 3,200 hectares in the very heart of Queensland. Wright needs space to put his herd to pasture, which is why he regularly cuts down trees. Like here, 200 hectares worth.
Legally, I'm entitled to knock every tree down in this paddock.
And what is your reaction, deforestation? What is your reaction?
I am not a deforester. I would not want to knock down even 50% of the timber on this place.
Just like the Wrights, many homesteads choose to clear huge expanses of land. Farming is the country's main source of deforestation. And near big cities like Brisbane, the traditional bushland is also receding fast, leaving nowhere to go for the area's wild animals, much to the despair of local activists. For the last 30 years, Deborah Taber has been fighting to protect koalas. She says total extinction is looming large, even more so since the recent fires.
I want legislation that protects the trees, because if you don't have trees, you don't have koalas. And honestly, all our governments would just love to just round them all up, put them in a zoo, get a tourist bus, see a koala, tick.
Over the last 10 years, deforestation has increased across the country. For this researcher at the University of Queensland, the problem has grown over the last decade, while attitudes haven't evolved fast enough, and at this stage, every little hurts.
It spreads to so many farmers that eventually the impacts of small individual scale clearing really become disastrous at larger landscape or even state ecoregion scales.
For years, farmers have been given a licence to log, but Queensland authorities have now reviewed and hardened the legislation. Yet environmental groups warn the tightening isn't enough, as most of the logging is done illegally.
Well, Afghanistan's post-war future and the role of the Taliban remain unclear. But the prospect of peace could mean more fun on the slopes. While security threats have kept some of the mountains with the greatest potential from being explored, near the capital, an increasing number of Afghans are getting their first taste of snowboarding. Some war-weary young are hoping the sport could shed the country's image of conflict.
It may seem like an unlikely winter sports destination, but this group of young people are trying to change perceptions of their war-weary nation, strapping on their snowboards and heading to the mountains on the outskirts of Kabul.
When I see how popular a sport is, with both girls and boys doing it, falling down again and again, but still keeping at it, I really believe it has a bright future and we can make something out of it.
The Afghan capital sits in a valley in the Hindu Kush Mountains, at an elevation of around 1,800 meters. The hillside was used by the Mujahideen during the civil war in the 1990s. Now it's a place for snowboarding practice. This group of friends are crazy for the sport, but they're worried they might have to give it up.
If the Taliban come back, it'll be impossible to go snowboarding, because the Taliban aren't sports-friendly people. They don't want peace or sport. If they come back, that's the end for us.
The US has been fighting the Taliban since 2001, making the conflict America's longest war. While the power struggle for Afghanistan's future continues, these young sports lovers can only hope that snowboarding remains a part of it.
Well, that wraps up this edition of Access Asia. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.
Fake news. Noun. False stories that appear to be news, spread on the internet or using other media. At France 24, our job is to provide you with information that's been verified. We check sources, we check facts, we sort what is true from what is fake.
At the France 24 Observers, we verify photos and videos circulating online. If they're fake, we let you know and tell you how we spotted them.
In Fact or Fake, we dig into viral stories around Europe to shake out the truth from the trash.
Every day, the Info Migrants team scours social networks to fight fake news about the reality of migration.
France 24, news based on facts.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.